Hello, and welcome to the Cryptocurrency News Channel. Today we're going to talk about XRP and the effect of this lifting this RBI's Indian ban. Now, this actually has more implications for XRP than other cryptos because um, this actually allows Indian banks to transact with fiat currency in their local currency, and that's really, really good for ODL. We know that they've been bragging a lot that everything in India runs on RippleNet, and all they have to do is flip it over and actually use ODL. And now, since they're actually able to do that, and actually one of the banks connected with one of Indian's big exchanges hours after the ban actually got lifted, you can see how ODL can actually slide right in. So this actually has really big implications because India is either number one or number two for remittances in the world. It's either India or China that's number one, and the other one's number two. I forgot which one. China's not really available because the country's strict control on money coming in and out, and they're not going to allow that. But that opens up either the biggest or the second biggest remittance um, market in the world to XRP. So that's potentially hundreds of millions of dollars per year, maybe billions of dollars per year, or actually billions of dollars per day. I think India is a couple hundred million per day in terms of possible remittances from all sources. The worldwide remittance market right now is something like 2 billion a day, and it's expected to grow to about 3.5 billion per day in 2030. A lot of people are talking about like the FX speculative market or the business transfers market, but those have their own issues. Like for big business transfers, a lot of people, a lot of companies, like large companies, will want to use already established corridors, and they'll also want to transact a lot of those big transactions via private corridors or like via private blockchains and not via public blockchains. They don't want the public to be able to see how much they're transferring or who's transferring or what. They want something on a more private chain. There's already like other ways they're actually working on to do that. They actually already have like priority lanes within the old infrastructure to transfer lots of money, and they can do it for far cheaper and far faster than regular customers. I've talked to some VIP customers, and they can easily get same day transfers on a priority basis at a very, very cheap cost. Um, that's why we're mainly talking about remittances, because these are like everyday sends that people do to their families. They don't have priority clearance, they don't have priority costs, they don't have like those kind of options that like big corporations and other important people do. These are just regular people sending money back to their families. And India is a huge, huge market for those. And opening up ODL to that market will actually be very significant for Ripple in terms of volume. Now, what this also means is that the crutch that XRP has been leaning on, saying like regulations is what's keeping us back. You can't actually keep saying that. As all these countries, the regulations start to fall over. Japan's probably going to do regulations this year. Korea has just done regulations today. India has lifted the ban. So you can see like all these things falling into place. And the thing is, like, if your coin is really that amazing, it should start to appreciate in price. If by this time next year, I mean, if the market like goes up and like all the altcoins go up like crazy, then yeah, sure, XRP will follow it up. But even if the market doesn't go massively up and all the other altcoins don't massively appreciate, if XRP truly is special, then based on what's happening around the world, there should be a lot more ODL use in a year, and not only should there be more ODL use in a year, but our investment of XRP should appreciate substantially. You can't use the excuse of let's not look at price, years on in a row. You can do it for a couple of weeks, obviously. You can do it for a couple of months, maybe a year, but next year at this time, it'll be over 3 years. And that's not a short time investment for anything. And especially because ODL, actually, like XRapid ODL, will have been up for about 2.5 years by then. And a lot of these corridors will have had their time to grow. So like US Mexican corridor, that's one of the biggest in the world for remittances. You have like Middle East Indian corridor and all this stuff. I know they're going to want to, if it doesn't move, they're going to want to use the excuse of US regulations. But the problem of always using that is much of the world's money transfer, especially in terms of remittances, doesn't actually run through USD. So you can't just blame everything on like US regulations. For instance, like Japan, Thailand transfers, that's not going to depend on USD at all. They don't care about USD for that because that doesn't go through USD. Same thing with like Middle East to India transfers. That's actually not going to go to USD at all, through USD at all either. And those are actually a lot of the corridors actually coming into India. So not only do I want to see ODL volume growing in the Indian corridors to other countries and from other countries, I need to see an actual increase in price and investment value. If I don't see that, then I think there's definitely something wrong with the tokenomics that everyone was expecting for XRP. Because if you're getting to that $100 billion mark per day of actual utility use, and you're not really seeing significant price increase, then like the actual price of the coin just simply doesn't need to be that high. And we all made a mistake in terms of tokenomics. I know people are thinking about hundreds of billions of dollars per transfer day or trillions. That's not going to happen for a very long time. You're looking at like FX markets for that. You're looking at like corporate transfers for that. And those are going to be a lot harder to take over. If you actually look at Susan Athey's paper, even her high water mark for 2030 is about $600 billion a day. And I don't know if we're going to reach that. Like I said, like these large corporate transfers, a lot of times they are just stock swaps, which aren't really going to use XRP or any like, well, they don't really even use cash, honestly, a lot with those stock swaps. But a lot of times they will actually use like the private corridors to actually transfer money and not a public blockchain or a public corridor. And they do have priority clearance. So like realistically, we definitely need, like, once you start taking over a significant portion of the remittance market, if we're seeing like Middle East, India, Japan, Thailand, China, well, not China, Southeast Asia, like Japan, Southeast Asia, Korea, Southeast Asia, Middle East, Southeast Asia, India, Southeast Asia, like once we see a lot of those corridors come up, if the price doesn't come up at that point, then the price might not come up for many, many years to come. So like in a year and a half, despite what the rest of the cryptocurrency market does, XRP should grow significantly in price. And if it doesn't perform the rest of the market, then I think it's time to admit that it's just not as special as people have been making it out to be, and it basically behaves like any other coin. You can't keep on leaning on the regulations crutch if regulations are coming down in all these countries, especially in the countries like in South America, in Southeast Asia, and in other places where most of these remittances are going to happen. Because yeah, USD is cool and all, but I mean, the US, like people remitting back to the US, I don't think is a huge market, because like there's not too many people that go work abroad that want to send money back to the US, and you're going to see a lot more money transfer between like the smaller Southeast Asian countries and like sometimes the African countries and the South American countries between each other. And those markets are probably going to be capturing the majority of the market, like as we go through this decade, and especially later on in this decade. So in the next year or two, XRP actually does need to outperform the market. If it doesn't, then we've been looking at tokenomics all wrong, and it actually just doesn't need to be that much for them to actually do these like remittance payments, or like companies just found another way to do remittances without a bridge currency or whatever. So that's kind of the report for today. Overall, this Indian news should be very, very good for XRP, but it does kind of like put XRP on the testing block. And if it doesn't really perform over the next year or two, then it is really time to look back and reevaluate the investment. You can't give it like another 10 years or something, because anytime you invest, you're looking at opportunity cost. If you have your money locked up in one crypto, that means you're not investing in other cryptos. Like, don't compare like, oh, I could just have this money sitting in the bank. No, because that's not what you would do anyways. You would actually have like the money sitting in another crypto if you weren't invested in XRP. And if it doesn't do well as the other cryptos, then you didn't make as much money as you could have made. I mean, talking about like VeChain, Cardano, a lot of these other well-known cryptos that have solid foundations and are actually growing as well. So that is the news for today. Let me know what you think, like and subscribe, and hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.